It's Saturday, and you know what that means. We're talking about classical chords today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's good to be with you on this beautiful Saturday afternoon here in August, and we're in the greater New York City area, and we're just really coasting through the summer. So I'm so glad to be with you because I wanted to bring some classical music to your attention. We've been talking about so many different types of music across the summer as we're talking about chords for all, and then now we are going to be talking about chords that you can find in the music of Bach, in the music of Beethoven, for instance. So I hope you'll stick around for that because I think that it might just give you some ideas about your own music making. By now, you should have a pretty nice collection of chords, and I hope you do. So, we will be talking about our fall collection of chords pretty soon and how we're going to put those to use. So, I am starting at the piano today. I hope you're having a good day, by the way. I was able to speak with some of my students today and to hear about their music making across the week. But if you just warm up on some chords, get out your G chord, get out your A minor chord, get out your D7 chord, another G chord, and then a C chord, a D7 chord, a G chord, an A minor chord, and a D7 chord. Okay, so we are using sample pages too of the music of these composers. So that's just to get you warmed up a little bit. Let me get myself together. I'm going to pull my pages together. I have music that I want to have in front of me as I talk with you today. And you are listening to C Major Before the Show. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining me here on C Major Before the Show. We got kind of quiet start to today's show, so we're doing things a little bit differently today. And so I just want to bring to your attention some of the chords that we will start with. I'm going to lower my music now here for a moment, and then we will get started. Now, the first composer I want to start with is Bach. So if you know anything about the music of Bach, let me go ahead and spell his name for you. B-A-C-H. So some of you pronounce it with a hard C and a hard K as if it's spelled B-O-C-K. I think there's a famous actor with a last name that spells it that way, B-O-C-K. But this Bach spells his name B-A-C-H. And I can think of one person that I don't personally know, but I know of just from watching YouTube that uses that same spelling, B-A-C-H. And the other name's Johann, which I guess we would probably interpret as John for us. Johhann. Sebastian is the middle name, Sebastian. Johann Sebastian Bach. But you pronounce it with a little softer ending, so Bach. So it doesn't sound like you're making the sound of a chicken. Bach, Bach, Bach. So you say Bach. So he wrote a song, apparently, called Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. At least that's the translation. And if you care to look up the catalog number, it's BMV 147, I believe. You can find all of this online, so I don't know who might be your source for sheet music, but if you need to know of any resources, then let me know. I'm going to jump right in, just play those chords that I had you warm up on. Then we're going to talk about some other things. There have been some funny things that are happening over the summer. I want to share some stories with you. And it involves my students. I just love my students. They just really keep me laughing, and we laugh together, and it's just so much fun. So your G chord, you will need to pull your chord collection together. Your chords collection, we'll say plural, so that you can find how to play the G chord. So we're just playing it as GBD, but we're going to go an octave lower, 8 steps lower, and play it here, GBD. And so then I'm going to go to an A minor chord. Okay, in today's description, I said, the thing that they have in common is that they're both using A minor. And that's according to these arrangements. This is an arrangement of this particular song, and we are just sampling the first page. And who knows, you may find a different key for this too, or you may decide to transpose that. I think in the future we will focus more on transposition, which some of my students are really, really comfortable with, and it's really nice to see that. Okay, then a D7 chord. So 7th chords would be the category, but when we see a D and a 7, we just say D7 chord. Okay, so if you have your chord chart available, just find that, and then G, and then C, D7, and then G, and then A minor and D7. Okay, I'm probably going too fast, right? Okay, so let me start over again. I'm just going to say it, and then I will play it after. So you need a G chord. If you are putting this on paper, I want you to put your G chord in a box, a little square, and then put a repeat sign so that you know to repeat that chord. Not the repeat sign with the 2 dots, but just a slash to say, okay, play that G chord again. Next, go to A minor. Then go to a D7 chord. Go back to G. Repeat that G. Go to C. And D7 after that. That's going to be an interesting change because we also are looking at time signature, something we didn't talk so much about here on C Major before the show, but we did spend a little time talking about it over at the C Major radio show. So join us over there later because we may say a little bit more about the time signature over there. And just to let you know, we probably won't do much playing over there, if any playing. I'm just going to go over how you would write these down using a term that I've coined, text notation. So we will talk more about that after today's broadcast has ended over here on C Major before the show. Okay, so next, G chord, and repeat that G chord, and then repeat that G chord again, and then come back strong with an A minor chord, and then go to D7. So I'll play a little bit of the melody too, so you can hear how the melody is going to go. And again, this is a sample of this particular piece, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. So the way they spell Jesu is Jesu, not with a Y, but you could spell it like that if you wanted to, just for your own reference. Okay, the composer is J.S. Bach. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, you're going to hear me hold these chords for a certain amount of time, okay? So I'm going to count up to 9. So we're actually using a 9/8 time signature. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I hope you're able to follow that. And so hopefully you were able to hear the changes too. So you're able to hear the changes. I'm not talking in terms of Roman numerals over here. I might decide to do that over at the C Major Radio Show later, just for our study purposes. But I really want you to think in terms of the letter names of the chords and how you're changing to each. Okay. Also, the movement may be a little bit confusing too, but I want to be clear on how I'm choosing the positioning of the chords. I am keeping everything pretty much below middle C the way I am playing the chords. Now, I just did that with one hand, but if I put down my microphone and I use both hands to play the chord so that my left hand thumb is in the root position of the chord, my left hand thumb is kept below middle C. So it's left hand thumb, right hand thumb, index finger. Okay, and I'm using those three particular fingers to play the triads of the chords, if you want to say that. Okay, so let's just go back to the beginning. And then it's so interesting. Would you use these chords to harmonize this song? Would you? Or would you do something else? But pay particular attention to how the A minor chord is used. That's the one chord I wanted to point out, that these songs that I will present today have something in common, and that something in common is the A minor chord. Okay, so let me just point out that first. Okay, so in two measures that I'm seeing right now, I see A minor used twice. So in the third measure, and then I will play the melody for you too, so hang on one second. Okay, and then you have A minor again for, okay. So, of course, to hear it in isolation, you go, oh, that's a little silly. Why would you play A minor in isolation like that? But it's just interesting to me. Okay, so now I'm going to play both with the chords and with the right hand part that I just played for you. I'm chording these chords in root position, by the way. Okay, so just take a listen. I'm going to put my microphone down for just a moment. And it is so interesting to me because when you hear it in isolation, you go, well, what in the world is that? It sounds almost dissonant, like there's a clash, like it needs to be resolved some kind of way. It doesn't make sense in isolation. But it will make sense once you put together the sequence, and then once you also think about, okay, what is the movement of this? What are the rules of music theory for this? So, now, let's go from the beginning. So now what I'm going to do is play the melody, and I want you just to envision where the chords are taking place for the melody, okay? Here we go. Okay, so were you able to envision the changes and where those were? Probably not, especially if you're driving in your car and you're thinking, I have no idea what she's talking about. I just don't know. But if you have this in front of you, then it will start to make a little bit more sense. So I love having these type of discoveries with my students, and then they hear it and then they know how the hands should be placed and things like that. And then they're working through their own ideas and saying, you know what, I want to harmonize this differently. I don't want to use it like that. Let me do something totally different. So they can make those choices for themselves. Okay, now let me put it together and then see if you can make sense of it. Okay, so again, I'm going to change the position of my microphone so you'll hear just a little bit of a change here in the sound. Okay, so then the question I have for you, does that sound good to your ear or does it sound off? Are you listening to that and you're just going, you know what, that does not sound like the original song at all. In fact, I think I've heard it in a different key. The chords don't really match. I don't think I want to play it that way. Or are you going to yourself, hey, that sounded pretty good. I think I might want to try that. So it's so interesting because everyone can make their choice at this point. You can say, you know what, I think I want to tweak it a little bit differently here. Because to me, when I hear this, I just say to myself, this is not the original way, that the chords are being changed. The harmonic sequence is different than what I remember, and I want to find another version. I would not like to play it this way, and especially if you have to perform the song. If you're a musician for hire and you are expected to play this, you probably wouldn't use this version, but this is a perfect version to teach students on how chords move and how chords change and help them to think how they want to change the chords. And the reason I say that is because you can even take something, and I have something as simple as Jingle Bells in the key of D, and say, okay, let's see how you would fill in the chords for the chord changes. Leave some of the boxes empty and see what they would choose. It may not, you'll be surprised if you're a teacher. If you're a private piano teacher, you may be surprised at what they choose. They may decide, okay, I'm going to keep some chords the same. I'm not going to change them at all. And then you have students that will just tell you, you know what, I don't want to change the chords. I want to just keep all the chords the same. Let's try that. Let's see what would happen if we just kept G, for instance, as our main chord in the left hand. And I'm also going to move my hand an octave higher so you can hear what that sounds like. So instead of playing it more in the middle, I'm going to play it more in the treble. What would that sound like if I just kept a G chord all the way through? So far I've mentioned G chord, A minor chord, D7 chord, C chord. I mentioned 4 chords. I think I have the time and the space to just play all of those chords as if they were the only chord to go along with the melody, and then have you say to yourself, wow, you really do need to change these chords. Okay, so let's go with G all the way through, okay? Just bear with me. Okay, so my instinct was to change that to A minor. It's almost like my body wouldn't let myself stay with the G chord. But now I'm going to try it again, and this time I'm going to stay on G, and you will hear the difference. I'll play it first with playing my hand an octave higher than I did initially, and then I'll bring my right hand back down to play it in the original position, but all the while keeping a G chord in the left hand. Okay, here we go. Okay. Now I'm going to bring my hand down an octave and then my right hand down an octave and keep that G in the same position and play it all the way through, but just keeping a G chord so you can hear the difference. Okay, C major needs to practice that last measure. So thank you. Thank you for laughing along with me. And so now what I'm going to do something totally different. I'm going to start the song as if you were to start it with an A minor chord. So let's start it. I don't know if I will continue all the way through. I think I wanted to just demonstrate what it would sound like with G all the way through. But I don't think I should do that for all the chords. And the reason why is because G is considered the home chord. So why would I do that? But just for variety, let's see what happens. So I'm starting this time with A minor. Let me keep A minor through at least the first 3 bars, maybe 4 bars. Let's see. Okay, so if you have any appreciation for the sound, or you don't have any problems hearing the changes, and you want to hear the changes, you're able to hear the changes, I think you would agree that it didn't sound the best to start with an A minor chord and then to stay on that A minor chord for that amount of time. But you could hear when it started to resolve itself when A minor sounded better, and it sounded better in that 3rd bar. Okay, now let's start off with a D7 chord. Let's see what happens. And I'll do the same thing. I'll stick with it for probably the first 3, 4, maybe 5 bars. Okay, so could you tell where D7 started to sound like it belonged? Which bar? Okay, let's do one more. This time I'm going to start with a C major chord, a C triad, and just play it all the way through. This time I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars, 7 measures. Okay, starting with C this time. Okay, so I picked up a couple of places where C actually worked, but because of the sequence, we probably didn't want to use C that early on and then just wait and use C where it belonged, which is in the last measure that I just played, the last bar where I played a C chord and I was supposed to shift to a D7 chord, but I didn't. Okay, now that you've heard me do that, let's see if you can have an appreciation for all of the changes where they belong. This time I'm going to start an octave higher than what I did initially and then just change the chords in the left hand. I'm not going to use any pedal. For those of you who are sensitive to too much pedaling, I'm not going to use any pedal at all. Okay, here we go. Okay, so hopefully you were able to hear what I was doing with that. Okay, so basically just trying to appreciate the chord changes. But again, it's a little disturbing to me to hear those changes because I think there should be different changes because I've heard the original and I've played the original. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. Now, what I'm going to do now is shift. And so we're going to go to our next tune. This is the only tune that I brought to you today that has to do with Bach. And so now I'm going to shift to a tune that has something to do with what one of my other students was working on. And so they wanted to work on a piece that would allow them to do what I call tiered learning. And so they wanted to start with the easiest version possible of this piece that they could find. And the reason they were comfortable doing this was because they actually played an instrument. So they were comfortable learning to play piano and requesting to play Furlies by Beethoven because they felt that they could learn it quickly. And to be honest, they've been able to do that. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, get my music together, and we have a music break coming up. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. I'll be right back in a few moments. You are here with C Major, here on C Major Before the Show. We are talking about classical chords today, chords that have to do with Bach and Beethoven. We're having some fun on today's show. Hopefully you are having some fun on today's show. And so we started off at the piano today. We changed our start-off location for the podcast. And so now what we're going to do is ease into another example as I lower my music here. Another example of a classical piece that involves an A minor chord, but as I'm bringing that out, I have it loaded, it's ready to go, and I'm still at the piano. But I want to tell you a funny story. I haven't done many student shout-outs over the summers because my students are basically relaxing over the summer and taking their time and going to visit family and going away on little excursions and then coming back and then going away again. You know, there's just a lot of movement throughout the summer. But the ones I've been able to connect with when they are here and I'm able to work with them on some music, I mean, they just really keep me laughing, keep me cracking up. So recently I had this student that really wanted to master a certain number of songs that he could play in front of family and friends if he received a request to play a song. And it was so cute. He couldn't recall the name of the song that he wanted to learn to play, so he described it in his own way And I couldn't help but just laugh along with him. He was laughing. I was laughing. It was just such a fun time. He said, you know, that song about the guy that's riding on a pony, and then it involves a pony. That much I know. I was like, riding on a pony. Are you talking about Yankee Doodle? Yeah, that's it. Yankee Doodle, Yankee Doodle. Can you teach me to play Yankee Doodle? So I said, okay, let's play Yankee Doodle. And then he tried on his own to see if he could recall any of the melody at all, and was able to recall it, but he kept getting stuck on some of the places where the intervals changed, and he just wasn't sure about how far up or how far down to go and which finger to use and things like that. And so we worked on that together. And then the funniest thing happened again. Yes, thank you for laughing along with me. And he said, okay, I think I got it. What's the name of the song again? And I thought, wow, he has such a really great memory. But for some reason, he just wasn't able to recall the title of the song. He said, it's a song about the guy with the pony again. What's the name of the song? Because by that time we had moved on to other things in the lesson. And I said, Yankee Doodle. He said, oh, yeah, Yankee Doodle. I don't know why I cannot remember that title. I don't know why. And then he just fell out laughing. And then he was able to recall how to play the song all the way through. So it's not an official shout out, but I just want to give an applause to that student. He tries so hard. Yes, very, very committed student when it comes to music making, and just so honest and so cute and so well-deserving of success in music, and has the full support of his family, his parents and his grandparents, and just is a joy to work with. And so I really wish him the best as he continues to grow in his music making. Just so honest, just saying, I don't think I like this level. It's a little harder. I think I want to go back to the old level of playing. But no, on second thought, I'll stay with this level. But it is harder. It doesn't get more honest than that. But he understands now. And it's so fun to see students grow, and they grow to that part where you really want them to want it for themselves. And he really has gotten to that point where he realizes the more time he spends with his music making when the teacher is not present, then the better he will be able to play the piano. And he understands that now, and is now starting to self-direct his learning a little bit more and decide, okay, I think I want to work on 3 songs this week. I want to work on this part. I want to work on dynamics. I want to work on phrasing. I want to play legato. I want to play staccato. I want to work on the chords. I mean, it's just so fun, and to be able to talk the musical language with that student. So just wanted to share that story with you, and I hope that you are feeling encouraged in your own music making this summer. Now, for Elise, I was encouraged by this student once I realized he wanted to learn how to play for Elise, but he wanted to start at the bottom first. For Elise, I have some emotions about how to pronounce this title, because you see the umlaut, F-U, with the 2 little dots over there. We call that an umlaut, and R, and then L-E-L-I-S-E, Elise. And I've seen some places where they even published it as Eloise. So, für Elise, or for Eloise, I guess would be the way you're supposed to think of it. Okay, and all these songs are presented for your own personal enjoyment. And if you're trying to fulfill some sort of musical requirement, just for yourself, really. If you require yourself to learn to play for Elise, it doesn't get better than that. So I was actually surprised and pleasantly surprised to see that they kept it. They kept the melody in its original place on the piano. And then you see, and it's a sample page, you see capital letters in C, Okay, that does not stand for no charge, no class, nothing like that. No chord. That's what it stands for. I'm pretty sure it stands for no chord. Look it up. I'm going to look it up just to be sure, because sometimes you think initials stand for something and then they don't. In the case of, there was something else. It wasn't DC Alfine. It was something else where I thought, I know what it was, metronome marking. I thought M, capital M stood for metronome marking, but it doesn't. It stands for Mizell metronome, I think. But look those up. Those are interesting things to discover when you start looking at the score. Okay, so okay, so don't mind how I just played it just now. I basically played it incorrectly because the notes were there, but the way I was clipping some of the time values, don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. I just did it that way. Supposed to play a little bit more smooth with a little bit more legato touch. And maybe not necessarily that fast either. So, but it's familiar. It should be familiar to you if you hear this. Okay, so then there's a repeat here. No chord. Okay, the first time the chord is used is when you come to that point. When you come to that A, then you're going to harmonize that. So again, our common chord today among these composers, Bach and Beethoven, is A minor. How did Beethoven decide to use an A minor chord in his music? In this case, he's starting with an A minor chord, so he's considering that A minor should be your home chord or your key chord. Say it that way. Okay. So let's start with that. Okay, now can you guess what comes next? In this particular piece, I'm only going to use 4 chords. A minor, E, A minor, E, A minor, and now my other 2 chords, C and G. Okay, so now let me just play the chords, and then I'll play the chords with the melody. So since you're already familiar with that, I'm pretty sure, then I will put the 2 together, the melody with the chords. Now I am playing everything in reposition, and I'm using triads. There are no 7th chords in this. No 7th chords. I just played a D7 chord just now because we did use that in the other piece. But there's not one in this. Okay, again, I'm looking at the sample page. So according to where you go, again, for your sheet music samples, you can see how to start the piece, and then you're responsible for buying the piece. So I would say, do the right thing. Be a purchaser of this musical file, especially if you are planning to use it for your own personal gigging. Then file sharing is nice, but it's best to have your own. And what I like about this is that once you commit to that, then they will say you have the rights to this music. They will put your name on it. So, okay, so here we go. We're going to start off with no chord. Then we go to A minor. 1, 2, 3. E major chord. Back to A minor. Okay. And that's a part of that bar. And then no chord at all. Then come back to A minor. And then E. A minor. I would say for 2 counts. And then you repeat all of that. And then A minor, E, A minor. And then rest your left hand so you're not playing chords at all. Then go back to A minor, go to E, and then go back to A minor. Now go to C and G. Okay, so just from hearing those changes, I can say, you know what, it sounds a little bit more authentic to play these chord changes. And I haven't even done anything with inversions. I think once we get over to the C Major Radio Show this evening, we will mention something about inversions and how to write those out from bottom to top. Okay, now what I'm going to do, you will hear a sound, you will hear a change in the sound of my microphone. So I may sound a little further away, and then I'll come back and talk with you a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Fairy Lease this time with chords. Okay, and that's where it stops. I had another student who made a joke about this, and really I hope you take it all with the right humor. But he said, it's kind of funny. You only get one page of something, and then you're expected to buy the rest. He said, if I were the person presenting this music, I would say, okay, that's all you get, folks. And for the next part, it's going to cost you. And then he would just fill in the blank with his own price that he wants to charge. And he just thought that was so funny. But I think it's nice that you get one page at least. You can see how it starts. You can use it for what I like to use it for, just to introduce the students to the music. And then they can decide, okay, is it going to be worth it for them to spend the money on the rest? Or if they want to just say, you know what, let me just learn something different altogether. I changed my mind. I do not want to learn this piece. So it's nice to have a sample for that reason. Okay, so you can see that A minor is used a lot more in this particular song. So have fun listening to it. Also, I noticed online there are no transposition options for these pieces that I've played so far. But feel free to transpose them, because the next one that I'm going to introduce, I'm pretty sure I've seen it published in several different keys. And so it's expected that you would transpose this, because the original score looks like, well, let me say it like this. It might be scary to some that are not used to playing in all keys. And they just initially see the key signature and then just think, oh boy, how am I going to play this song? Okay. Also a piece by Beethoven. So now we're moving into Moonlight Sonata. So before I do, again, let me put some music on for you. I think I need a sip of some juice or something. I did invite you to bring your coffee and your cheese snacks to the podcast. I had my cheese and my coffee yesterday. I couldn't wait until today, so I had it yesterday. But I think what I want to do now is just drink some juice. Although my drink of the week, I would say, was a little bit more healthy. It was more involving green tea with some lemon. So you're listening to C Major Before the Show. I'm your host, C Major Porter. I'll be right back in a few moments. are here on C Major Before the Show. I'm your host, C Major Porter. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Saturday afternoon. It's beautiful. It's August 10th, and we are so happy to be here with you and to talk with you about the music of Bach and Beethoven. And so I have one or two students, I would say, that have been interested in playing this, and it's going to be interesting to see which ones want to work on this through tiered learning. Before I launch into this, I know it feels like we've been away for a couple of weeks because we were giving you some throwback episodes at one point, and then prior to that we were talking about our plans, I guess, after summer. We've been talking about a lot of things across the summer, it feels like, but I wanted to give you a live music making report. And so I was able to attend a free festival in the greater New York City area, around New York, I'll say it that way. And so not everything for free is the way to go. But this was really a nice event. It involved house music, if you're into house music or deep house, that whole culture. And I have friends that are definitely into house and deep house, and so they were the ones that told me about it. But it was really interesting to see how many people in the audience were so into the music. And it just made me really want to learn my history a little bit more when it came to house music culture. And so I have my own feelings about the music and how I like to use it when I'm listening to it. And so I know what house music does for me, but it was just so fascinating to see what house music did for others and to see some of the live performers and so forth. And I just kept wondering to myself, I wonder how many of the people out here, I wonder how many of them have tried to play the piano or can play a keyboard. They would know what to do with a keyboard if you put it in front of them. And so the music was basically track-based. So there was not a live band. It was mostly just a sound engineer operating the sound at this event. And so it was really, really, really good to see, though, the joy of the music making and the facial expressions on the faces of those who were listening. But here we go, back to Beethoven. So this starts off with an A minor chord, A minor. We'll start here. Then it goes to F. Then it goes to B flat. And then an E7 chord, A minor, E, and then E7. A minor, E7, A minor, D minor, C, and then G. Okay, to somebody who wants to hear a little bit more movement when it comes to chord changes, you might have more of an appreciation for this. We are in 4/4 time, according to this sample of the score. So I'm going to play a little bit of what the right hand is doing now, and I might decide to use a little pedal, so we'll see. Okay, and then it goes into the next part. So, really interesting. It's close. It's definitely not the original. And so it's not in the original key. It's not even the original way you would play these broken chords and the way you would even voice some of it. So that's interesting. Okay, so now let's hear what it all sounds like hands together. But before I do play hands together, I just want to have you be clear on what's going on with the sequence itself. Okay, so you're in 4/4 time. So you have an A minor chord going first for 4 counts. And really what the right hand is doing is playing triplets. So some people say triplet, some people say 1 lolly, 2 lolly, and whatever helps you to play the triplet correctly. So I'm almost forced to hesitate coming up to that, or either use the pedal so it sounds a little bit more smooth. So now I'm thinking, how am I going to play these chords? Because if I'm used to playing the chords here, more in the middle to the bass, I definitely don't want to start down here. Then it sounds a little too muddled, too muddy. Okay, and if I go here, it sounds too high. Okay. So that's the reason for inversions, or leaving out part of the chord so it doesn't sound too muddy if you're playing a little closer with hands closer together. And I'll figure it out. Okay, so let's go over the changes. So you have an A minor chord for the first bar, and then you repeat that chord. Then you go to F for 2 counts, go to B flat for 2 counts, then go to A, E7, A minor, E, E7. So that's a chord for every count in that particular measure. And then you go back to A minor for 4 counts, E7 for 4 counts, A minor for 2 counts, D minor for 2 counts, C for 2 counts, G for 2 counts. Hopefully you got all of that. And then when you see the original score, you know they're not going to use these same chord changes anyway. But this seems to work. Now I'm just going to see what it feels like to play my hands this close together and see if I can make some music out of it. We'll see. I'm not really focused on dynamics, not really focused on articulation so much. It really is about the change of the chord. Where is this going? And so let's see what happens. Okay, so you're going to hear my sound change for just a moment, and then you'll hear me play the piano. Okay, so a couple of hesitations. I don't know if I was that committed to playing the chords in that position, and I don't know if I was committed to those particular changes, but I think it's reasonable. And I'm not being a critic, I'm just noticing because, again, I know what the original sounds like. And so to hear this, and it does say abridged version. Look up that word abridged so you know for yourself. Oh, by the way, once I get to my other location, I will be looking at the concise dictionary that I was able to get my hands on. And so a gently used copy of the concise dictionary that I love so much, but I'm going to take a look at that with you once I get to my other location. This is Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2, movement 1, the abridged version by Ludwig van Beethoven. So you would spell his name Ludwig. So you say Ludwig or Ludwig, and then van Beethoven. I've heard that the last name is supposed to be an interpretation of the word beetroot or something like that, but van Beethoven, V-A-N, Some places I've seen Beethoven, 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 Beethoven. So, this time, let me see if I can. I'm not going to change the chord inversion. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to change the voicing. I'm not going to even take anything out. But I just want to hear what it sounds like if I play my right hand an octave higher. And I will stick with piano. I could choose, one of my students really loves the sound of harpsichord. I could choose harpsichord. I could choose a different sound, but I'm going to stick with grand piano. Actually, let me see if I put it on a brighter piano sound. Let's see if that makes a difference. Okay, here I go. This time you will hear the sound change a little bit. My voice will move away from the microphone, and then I'm going to play this time with hands further apart. Okay, so that felt a little distracting because I think it works better with the hands closer together. It just feels better to have the hands closer together. But I wonder what it would sound like. Now, I'm not gonna play the whole thing. I won't put you through that. But let's just see if it makes that big of a difference to play the chords lower. And if you know anything about the music of Beethoven, you know he used those lower registers on the piano, those lower octave ranges, because during Bach's time, he didn't even have the advantage of a piano. It wasn't invented yet. So, of course, Beethoven came along, and so he's known for his thicker textures in his music writing, and he had the advantage of using the piano, whereas Bach was just stuck with clavichords and organs and virginals and clavinets and harpsichords, and so he had to do the best that he could. Okay, now. Okay, so I made some really lower octave choices there. And to me, it just sounded too muddy. So somewhere it gets between the middle and, but I really like, what's really striking to me, again, is what they have the right hand doing. I'm playing this A below middle C, and then I come up an octave higher to finish that triplet rhythm. Then I do this. Then I have to dip below to play my G below middle C, and then come back up to continue the triplet. Okay, what I really like is how that D sounds so nice with the A minor triad. So let me just play the first two bars again. So, okay, so again. Sorry. It's a minor 7th chord. Okay. Very interesting. I wonder why they didn't put that over there. I wonder if they just decided to treat that G like it's a passing note. Okay, either way, it is what it is. you can find this online. It is available for your own observation, and you can take a look at it and see what you think. Change things as you like, tweak them, have fun with it. I mean, chords are supposed to be fun, aren't they? And so I just recall going to school with so many other musicians and pianists who were so serious about their music making that it seems at the end of the day they were not having fun and ended up with injuries and everything else. And so with my students, I really try to laugh and have fun and not in a way that makes fun of the music. I think it's just to really make fun of how you're learning something and not to be so serious and so tense, when it comes to music making. And so I think, I also want to challenge myself further too, as you know, I've said, but I'm not talking about me right now. Really, I'm talking about you and your learning. Thank you so much for being with us here today on C Major Before the Show. We're getting a little bit carried away on our presentation for the music of Bach and Beethoven and talking about classical chords. And we just borrowed these samples from online. Anyone can find these samples online. If you ever have any questions about the resources that we use on this podcast and where to find them, please let us know. We are friendly enough to tell you. We're not trying to keep everything to ourselves in that regard. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change my location so you will hear some movement. But just bear with us for a moment. And we're going to be changing our location, but we're going to stay with you. Let me just go back to some music. See if I can take some music with me as I'm moving. And you are invited also to join us over at the C Major Radio Show a little bit later on this evening. And what we're going to do there is continue our discussion of chords and classical music and just have you tune in and see what your understanding is of how these chords work for these particular songs. Okay, you're here with C major, and again, you're going to hear some movement as I change my location. I'm taking my music with me. You're here with me on C major before the show. You're here on C Major Before the Show. I'm your host, C Major Porter. I've changed my location, and so I'm just getting just a little distracted looking at some of the resources that I can bring to the podcast. But it's all because of you. If I didn't have you showing me that you're interested in learning more about music making, then I would probably just be a little bit more relaxed about bringing resources to the podcast. But I found this really great book, and I think I brought this to your attention maybe earlier this year, or it could have been last year, but it was talking about rhythms and how to develop a winning approach to developing your skill when it comes to rhythms. And it's for all ages, all instruments. I'm pretty sure I talked about it on the podcast before, but I couldn't help but wonder how you could use these rhythms to help yourself practice chords. You know, even just looking at the first rhythm, which you practice your chords in this way. You write in the counting, and then they're saying clap and count the rhythm and then play. But play what? What are you playing? Are you playing a single note? I have to look in the beginning and see how the composer, the author, wanted you to use this book. I think the way he mostly wanted to see you use it was, according to this, was melodically. Play each line on any single pitch. I wonder why that was important. Could you practice playing each line with chords? You're practicing your harmony in that same way. I suppose you could. And you just have to be really careful at how much pressure you're putting on yourself physically. You don't want to harm yourself by playing chords that many times using these particular rhythms. But anyway, if you have a chance to, take a look at this book. It's about rhythm skill development. And the reason that's coming to mind is because we were talking about chords and rhythms, and then we will continue to talk about chords and rhythms in the future. And the reason I know that is because I put it in my notes to talk about it. And what I'm interested in is, first of all, congratulating you all on your chords journey so far. You've been with us for Chords for Parents. You've been with us all through Chords for All. And now, as we are approaching the fall, I'm thinking about doing a series where we focus on chords for students. And this, anyone who's studying piano and you happen to be in school, it could be school, it could be pre-college, it could be college, it could be someone who is studying on their own, self-study. But it's chords for study, really, that's what it is, chords for students. And so that's different than Chords for All. Chords for All meant someone who wants to just dabble in it, or just really kind of take a temporary look at chords and then go on with the rest of their life, so to speak, and say, you know what, I don't have time for this. I have to get busy with my work, my own career, doing something else. Music is a hobby. I don't have time for this, and not going to bother with this at all. But this is for someone who wants to study, I would say, for at least 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. And so if you are interested in that, let's see. Oh, new note. I mean to do that. Again, let me congratulate you on your chords collection. By now you should have a number of chords in your collection. Major, minor, 7th chords, maybe not so much 9th chords, although we mentioned that. But you can consider yourself an official chords collector. And now you can start to think about how would you throw in some rhythm with that. So we hope to address that. We've done it a little bit already, but you can play chords without playing rhythm. You could, without consciously playing rhythm. But once you start to think about, oh, this is what I'm doing, I'm really throwing in some rhythm here. And that came to mind because I saw a really great video on YouTube of a teacher, a master teacher, I should say. And we posted the video over on our Facebook page for C major before the show. And so he was talking about rhythms, and mostly he was referencing jazz, but he was just saying he really wished he could find a way to tell which comes first. How is that rhythm dictated? Is it just dictated through his hands knowing exactly what to do, or is it more of a thought of the rhythm? Which comes first? Kind of like the chicken and egg problem. So interesting. If you have a chance, look at that video. But if you treat rhythms as an accessory, which is kind of what we're doing, we're saying learn the chords first in isolation, and there are some master pianists who totally disagree with that. I know they do. They don't even care about naming the chords. It's like, who cares if it's a C11? Well, I do. I want to know what the name of the chord is. Finally, I want to know what the name of the chord is, and to know how to call on that chord every single time, and it's something that I want to work with you on as well. But not everyone will be able to play rhythms the same. And what I mean by that is that I think it's a choice in a lot of cases. Will you choose to use this particular rhythm, or will you choose to use something else? But what I loved that this music theory book was teaching was that every song has its own harmonic rhythm. So imagine you're sitting there in Carnegie Hall or at the former Avery Fisher Hall, and you were listening all this time to just melody, but then you really start to pay attention to what is the harmony doing? What is the harmony doing? Is the harmony going just as fast as the rhythm, or is the melodic rhythm, or is it doing something else? So this music theory book, is teaching you how to outline the rhythm. And I just kept thinking to myself, I just don't recall talking about this in undergraduate music classes. Maybe I was out that day when we talked about that, but I find that so fascinating now. It's something I really want to work with my students on, to say, look, pay attention to this. So if you go ahead and outline the melody, and then you go ahead after that and then outline what the harmony is doing, it's just so fascinating to see where the changes really are. And you can see for yourself, this song is really not doing much at all. And I recall my musician friends who were born being able to play by ear, so it seemed. And they would say, this is all the song is doing. It's not doing much at all. Like, what do you mean it's not doing much at all? There's a lot going on with the song. Then they would just demonstrate, no, this is what's happening. And so to really start to think of music in more simple terms, and in terms of chords, is what I'm trying to have you do, if you care to. You may say, you know what, C major, I really don't want to listen to music that way, but it will change your life. It will. There are a few things that have changed my life, and that's one of them. Learning to listen to music harmonically. And I recall one of my musician friends who had perfect pitch. You could tell the hum of a car what key it was in. And she said the same thing, going to a concert, starting to listen to the harmonic rhythm really changed the way she listened to music. And she was a singer. Okay, so I'm not able to put my hands on this page that I'm looking for, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's not that we didn't do harmonic analysis. That's different when you do a harmonic analysis on a Mozart sonata in class. But to really just isolate, when we did harmonic analysis, it was just to hear what the whole entire song was doing. But just to isolate just the harmony, I just don't recall having a class where we just did that. I don't recall that. I wish we did. Okay, so I can't find it right now. What I'm going to do then, I will just try to bring more of this to your attention over at the C Major Radio Show. So I won't tie up your time here over at C Major Before the Show. Thank you so much for joining me over here. It's been a great pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy this weather while you can. Before you know it, the leaves will be changing. They're already talking about pumpkin spice season. If you are into pumpkin spice the way that I am, PSL, and you're watching the launch, I mean, there was this incredible launch a couple of years ago where we all were just glued to our laptops waiting for the pumpkin to hatch. And I cannot wait for that type of experience again. And you just think to yourself, well, who has time to be watching a pumpkin all day? But there were people watching their pumpkins, watching the pumpkin hatch process, I should say, at work. And with their mobile devices, it was huge, like probably the hugest marketing campaign I've seen for pumpkin season. And everybody, of course, is waiting for pumpkin spice to come about. So if you are an enthusiast, as I am, then just know I will be bringing that up here on the podcast. We talk about coffee. We talk about coffee culture. We talk about wellness. We talk about music making and wellness. We talk about snacks that you can bring, anything that piques our interest. I recently ran across this menu for jerky, of all things. And so some of you who are vegan, I know you'll be interested in that. But if you're non-vegan, let me tell you, they have all type of snacks, everything from alligator jerky to python jerky to kangaroo jerky, vegan jerky. I mean, it was just amazing to see what some people were into when it comes to snacks. But we're interested in coffee, and we're interested in coffee culture. Cheese and coffee go together. That was recently brought to my attention. I had a friend that brought some cheese snacks that I'd never tasted before, and she wanted me to try it. And she was really enthusiastic about trying it with her coffee, and then she passed out samples to everyone. So that was the inspiration for this weekend's podcast photos. And we try to post interesting photos, things that are really happening in the greater New York City area and a little bit beyond the New York City boundaries. But we try to involve you and some of the things that we're seeing as we're out and about. It's all about music making. As one very famous person said, it's all music. And I think what she meant by that is that everything has its own rhythm, and if you're just paying attention, you can find a way to make music out of it. Make the best music you can make. We say that all the time on this podcast, using chords, using melody, whatever you can get your hands on. Listen to music, put on some recordings. Now more than ever, the internet is just booming with opportunities to hear music. I mean, you have Deezer, you have Spotify, you have Apple Music. The list goes on. And if you are into building your music library or sampling the music that's out there, if you're a DJ, I mean, it's just a very exciting time when it comes to music making and also creating your own music. So I recently saw, and I'll share this and I'll let you go, recently saw this very famous genius of a pianist playing music just using multiple iPads, mobile devices, as well as a real acoustic grand piano, well-respected grand piano, and just to see how he was infusing the acoustic with the technology, it was just so fascinating. The whole process of it all is just fascinating. And I have friends that are interested in building pianos, and so it's just a really lovely time to be into music making. Make the best music you can make, and we'll see you next time right here on C Major Before the Show. Don't forget that I'm going to be posting a poll this weekend. We're getting back to our poll posting, so if you can take part in that, look for that on social media. I'll let you know when I'm going to be bringing that to your attention sometime over the weekend. Also, I might decide to give you some homework too, but we'll see. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.